population explosion is diminishing the quality of life of everybody in this country. It is making us poorer. It is unacceptable. And this says nothing about the quality of the vast majority of people that come. We've all got friends that have come here from all over the world. We're a very welcoming country. We just can't take million upon million upon million. It does not work. And those sheer numbers have led in some parts of the country, and I'm thinking perhaps in the northwest, of Blackburn, of Burnley. We could cross the Pennines and go to Leeds or Bradford. And you saw what I saw in the local elections this year. For the first time in our lives in England, people voting on sectarian lines. People voting purely on religious lines. Communities so separated and divided from the rest of us because we have allowed people to come in too fast, too quickly, in too big a numbers that it's been impossible to integrate those people in society. Now rival communities, living together in the same towns and cities, not terribly far away from where we are now. And that is not a great recipe for the future. It is a major problem that we're going to have to deal with, and deal with responsibly. And young men, aged 18 to 24, a growing number of them, who literally loathe the values that we stand for. And what do we stand for? If you think about it, whether we're churchgoers or not, everything about our country, everything about our culture is based on Judeo Christian values. Everything. Everything. Nobody else dares say this, but it's true, isn't it? Yes. Everything is based, in a sense, on the Ten Commandments. Yes. I'm in favour of most of them, you know. Might have broken one or two over the years, but everything is... These are the fundaments upon which our country was built. This is what matters. And our values are those values. Our values are those that the family matters, that community matters, that working with each other matters, that country matters. This is what Reform UK is. These are our values. These are our principles. And you're very welcome to come in from anywhere in the world, from any religion. If you share those values with us, we can live together happily and in peace. But our irresponsible politicians have led us down a road where this no longer works. And perhaps the most striking example of this is what is happening in the English Channel. Now, I went out into the English Channel. In fact, just as lockdown started, I thought I needed an excuse to get out of the house. And the pubs were closed, so where can I go? So I went out in March, April and May of 2020 into the English Channel, and I filmed the small boats. You know, I literally got right up within yards of these boats and I filmed them. And I said, and I was putting it out on YouTube in those days, I said two things. I said, number one, you might as well put a sign on the White Cliffs of Dover saying everyone welcome, because we'd stopped deporting illegal immigrants. Do you know, in the last year of the Labour government, 2009-10, we deported 45,000 people. That is what we used to do. We used to say, if you want to come and live here, you do it legally. You want to come here illegally, we get rid of you, because that makes sense, doesn't it, to everybody? To everybody. But I also said there were two big problems. One, mainstream media were not covering this story. The newspapers weren't covering it, the radio stations weren't covering it, the TV companies weren't covering it. And I think my actions, my repeated actions, embarrassed them, frankly, into going out and covering the story. But I also said, and I predicted, that this would become, and then I used a very naughty word, unforgivable word. A word for which I'll never be forgiven. I said, this will lead to an invasion. Well, I mean, you would have thought, I'd advocated killing the firstborn, But 4,000 boats and 127,000 people later, I think I was right to use the word invasion, because that is what it is. On Tuesday of this week, 882 people crossed the English Channel. 91% of those that cross are male. Nearly all of them are young, and here's the point. Here's the point. Many come directly from war zones, in which they may well have been severely brutalized, or may even have been brutal themselves, for all we know. Others come from places where terrorism is rife. Some come from countries in which gang culture is predominant over the rule of law. Most come from countries in which women are not even regarded as second-class citizens. And I have filmed, and it's up there on YouTube, as they reach the 12-mile territorial water line of the British coast, them throwing their iPhones and their passports into the channel, so it's much more difficult for us to identify whether they have criminal records in whatever country they may have come from. And you may be upset and annoyed that the bill for putting these people up in four-star hotels is £8 million a day. You may be upset that many of our seaside towns or even tourist towns inland, their summer seasons are ruined because the hotels are full of these young men. Those things may upset you. Those things may annoy you. But maybe, folks, you're not thinking about it the right way. Maybe what we should be doing is declaring this a national security emergency. And in the face of all of this, Rishi Sunak says, the planes are going to Rwanda. Every Home Secretary tells us we're going to stop the boats. Look at who it is. Priti Patel, Suella Braverman, and now the very inappropriately named James Cleverly. Look, they're always abusive about me. All I'm doing is teasing them. I think it's okay. They all say we're going to stop them. Boris said he'd stop the boats. Big speech at Lynn Airport in Kent. Sunak's promised us planes will go in July. And do you remember he told us that people were now in detention who would go on those flights in July? I have a news update for you. Every single one of those young men, every single one, you know this already, so shut up or you ruin it. Every single one of those, I said shut up or you ruin it. Every single one of those young men that was placed in detention has now, through using the Human Rights Act, been released on bail, and I'm reliably informed most have absconded and disappeared. Unbelievable. And no planes are going to Rwanda, because the increasingly active European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg won't allow it, and this Conservative Prime Minister hasn't got the guts to deal with it. He says in a debate, we'll consider leaving if they don't let us send planes to Rwanda, which means he says to the Eurosceptic wing of the party, I'm with you, and to the Europhile globalist wing of the party, I'm with you as well. And it sums them up. They're split down the middle. They stand for literally nothing. They have no guts, they have no backbone, they have no integrity. Their honesty of this betting scandal is seriously called into question yet again. And as for Labour, nothing. Nothing. They're going to crack down on the criminal gangs. Well, folks, we've been cracking down on the criminal gangs that sell illegal drugs on the streets of Blackpool for decade after decade. Is it working? Is it hell? And a gang in midsummer trafficking people across the English Channel can make 2 to 3 million euros a week. When the rewards are that high, whatever you do to the gangs, you will not stop them. And we finish up with this issue of the Channel, perhaps summing up the choice we face at this election. The Conservatives deserve to lose, but Labour don't deserve to win. The votes symbolise all that is wrong and unfair. Because people who come here legally and go through the hoops and pay a fair amount of money to become British citizens, it's a bigger affront to them in some ways than it is to those of us that were born here. It's totally unfair. It's wrong that our taxes go to put them up in hotels. It's wrong that our streets will become less safe as a result. It's wrong that we face potential terrorism as a direct result of all of this. But it can be done. And a friend of mine, Tony Abbott, who was the Prime Minister of Australia just over a decade ago, faced the same problem. The boats were coming from Indonesia. In the end, he said, no one that comes to Australia via this route will ever be allowed to settle. And we can do that, but only if we cut the Gordian knot and leave the European Court of Human Rights. And then we say, anyone that comes via that route, whether it's in the back of a lorry, whether it's on a small dinghy, will never, ever, ever, ever be given status to remain in our country. We make that clear. And if that doesn't work, and it will work, if that doesn't work, we'll say to the French, the fact that your Navy, despite the fact we've given you 500 million quid to stop this, the fact that your Navy still escorts dinghies from 200 yards off the beach at Gravelines to our 12-mile line and then hands over the people to Border Force or the much abused RNLI. We said to the French, we won't accept this. The international law of the sea actually says if these people are in peril, they should go back to France. And French Navy, if you won't take them back to France, if necessary, we will take people back to France. Only